Greetings, traveller. Here in the silence of this library, I uncover the most fascinating stories that have long been forgotten. Stay a while and listen, and I shall take you on a journey that has endured for centuries. Stories from Wraeclast, the King of Fury. Chapter 1. The Pride of the Karui. The wind howled across the restless sea, driving salt spray into our faces as we rowed, hearts pounding, toward the black shore of Wraeclast. The sky was bruised with dawn, the horizon a blade of fire. I gripped my axe, knuckles white, and looked to King Kaom, standing tall at the prow of the lead canoe. His silhouette was carved from iron, unyielding, his eyes fixed on the land that had stolen so many of our kin. We were Karui Ngamahu's children, born of fire and storm. For generations, the eternal empire had chained us, worked us to death in their fields and mines, broken our backs and our spirits. But Kaom had united the tribes, forging us into a single, unstoppable tide. He was more than a king. He was our hope, our vengeance, the living voice of our ancestors. When he spoke, we listened. When he commanded, we obeyed. The canoes cut through the surf, scraping against the jagged stones. I leapt ashore, boots sinking into blood-wet sand. The watch loomed above us, its walls bristling with eternal steel. Lioneye's men were waiting, shields locked, spears gleaming, eyes cold as the moon. Their discipline was legendary, their cruelty infamous. But we were not afraid. Behind us, the sea. Before us, our freedom. Kaom raised his axe and roared, a sound that split the sky. We surged forward, axes and spears flashing. The Eternals met us with a wall of shields, their formation perfect, their faces blank beneath their helms. But we were the storm. Arrows whistled overhead. Hiri's archers, the pride of the Karui, striking from the cliffs. Eternal soldiers fell screaming, their blood painting the stones. I fought like a man possessed. My axe found flesh, bone, armor. I saw brothers fall, heard sisters cry out, but I pressed on, driven by the fire that Kaom had kindled in my heart. The Eternals broke, their line shattering under our fury. Lioneye himself stood atop the ramparts, barking orders, his golden armor shining. Kaom charged, his warriors at his heels, and the two kings met in a clash of steel and hate. I watched as they fought, each blow echoing across the battlefield. Lioneye was skilled, his sword a blur, but Kaom was a force of nature, unstoppable, relentless. With a roar, Kaom struck the final blow, sending Lioneye tumbling from the wall. The Eternal King's head was severed and hoisted high, his blood mingling with the sea. We had done the impossible. Lioneye's watch was ours. That night, we feasted by the light of burning pyres. The air was thick with smoke and victory. Kaom stood before us, his chest heaving, his eyes wild with triumph. He spoke of freedom, of vengeance, of a new dawn for the Karui. His words were fire, and we were the tinder. I believed him. We all did. But as the fires died and the shadows grew long, I saw something flicker in Kaom's gaze, a darkness, deep and hungry. I dismissed it as exhaustion, the toll of battle. But even then, a chill crept into my bones, as if the land itself whispered a warning. We had won, but at what cost? And what waited for us in the heart of Wraeclast? Chapter 2. The King's Triumph. The days that followed our conquest were a blur of blood, sweat, and uneasy celebration. We buried our dead in the sand, marking their graves with stones and whispered prayers. The Eternals we left for the crows, a warning to any who would challenge Karui might. Lioneye's watch, once a symbol of eternal strength, now bore the scars of our fury. Its walls were stained with the memory of our vengeance. Kaom walked among us, his presence a storm barely contained. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice was iron. He ordered the fortifications rebuilt, the wounded tended, the spoils divided among the tribes. No one questioned him. He was our king, our deliverer. When he passed, warriors bowed their heads, children reached for his hand, and elders offered blessings. Yet, in the quiet moments, I saw him staring out to sea, his jaw clenched, his gaze distant. We all felt it, the unease that crept in with the fog each morning. Wraeclast was not like our homeland. The air was heavy with secrets, the nights alive with whispers. Some said the land was cursed, that the ancestors could not find us here. Others spoke of shadows moving beyond the firelight, of dreams filled with screaming faces and rivers of blood. Kaom dismissed these fears. "We are Karui," he thundered, "and no curse can break us." Still, he began to change. The rituals grew longer, the sacrifices more frequent. He demanded offerings to the ancestors, food, blood, sometimes even prisoners from the eternal ranks. At first, we accepted this as the price of victory. But as the days wore on, the lines between vengeance and cruelty began to blur. One night, I was summoned to Kaom's tent. The air inside was thick with incense and the copper tang of blood. Kaom sat cross-legged before a fire, his axe across his knees, his eyes reflecting the flames. "You fought well," he said, voice low and hoarse. "You are loyal. You understand what must be done." I nodded, though my heart pounded. He spoke of visions of a great spirit, a god of fire and war, who promised glory if we pressed on. He spoke of the eternal empire's heart, of San and the riches it held. "This land is ours by right," he said, "but it will not yield easily. We must be strong, stronger than the Eternals, stronger than the dead." I left his tent shaken, the fire's glow clinging to my skin like a fever. Outside, the night was cold and silent. I looked up at the stars, searching for the ancestors, but found only darkness. Our raids grew bolder. We struck at eternal patrols, burned their outposts, shattered their lines. Each victory fed Kaom's hunger. Each defeat stoked his rage. He began to see betrayal everywhere. Warriors who faltered were punished harshly. Those who questioned his orders disappeared. The king who had once inspired us with hope now ruled with fear. I tried to speak with Hiri, to voice my concerns, but she was distant, her eyes shadowed. "He is our king," she said. "We must trust him." But I saw the doubt in her face, the fear she would not name. The land itself seemed to turn against us. The dead rose from their graves, their eyes empty, their mouths twisted in silent screams. We fought them by torchlight, our axes slick with rot and black blood. Kaom called it a test, a trial by fire. But I saw the toll it took on our people. The exhaustion, the despair, the growing sense that we were fighting not just for freedom, but for our very souls. One dawn, as the mists curled over the ruined walls, I found Kaom standing alone, his axe buried in the earth. He did not look at me. "Do you hear them?" he whispered. "The voices in the dark, they promise so much, but at what cost?" I had no answer. I only knew that the king I had followed across the sea was slipping away, replaced by something harder, colder, more desperate, and still we marched on, deeper into the heart of Wraeclast, chasing a victory that now tasted of ash. Chapter 3: Descent into Madness. We pressed inland, leaving the sea and its bitter winds behind. The land grew stranger with every mile. Forests of twisted trees clawed at the sky, their roots tangled with the bones of the dead. Ruined villages crouched in the shadows, haunted by the memories of slaughter. Our numbers thinned, some lost to battle, others to the creeping sickness that gnawed at flesh and mind alike. Still, Kaom drove us forward, his eyes burning with a fever I could not name. The king who once walked among us now stalked ahead, always alone, speaking to the fire as if it answered. His axe, once a symbol of hope, became a tool of terror. He demanded more sacrifices, more blood, convinced that only through violence could we appease the spirits of this accursed land. The rituals grew grotesque, eternal prisoners butchered beneath the moon, their screams echoing through the trees. Some Karui began to whisper that the ancestors had turned their backs, that Kaom no longer heard their voices, but something else, something older and hungrier. I tried to hold my men together, to remind them of why we had come. But fear is a poison, and it spread quickly. The bravest warriors grew hollow-eyed and silent. The young wept in their sleep, haunted by nightmares of fire and drowning. Even Hiri, once so fierce, avoided Kaom's gaze, her face pale with dread. One night, the king called his chieftains to a council. We gathered around a great fire, the woods alive with the howls of the restless dead. Kaom stood before us, his armor smeared with blood, his voice a thunderclap. "The empire is weak," he spat. "Their gods are dead, their walls crumbling, but the land itself resists us. The spirits demand more courage, more sacrifice. Who among you will falter?" No one spoke. To challenge him was death. He turned to me, his gaze a blade. "You are loyal. You remember the chains. Will you break before the storm?" I shook my head, though my heart ached. "I will not break, my king, but our people are weary. The land is poison. We must be careful." He laughed, a sound without joy. Careful? The Eternals were careful, and now they rot in the shadows. We are Karui. We take what we are owed. That night, he ordered a raid on a nearby settlement, rumored to hold survivors of the Eternal Army. We struck in darkness, axes flashing, torches setting roofs alight. The screams of women and children mingled with the roar of flame. I tried to hold my men back, to spare the helpless, but Kaom was everywhere, his axe rising and falling, his face splattered with blood. When the slaughter ended, the village was ash, and Kaom stood atop the ruins, arms raised to the sky, howling his triumph. I saw then that he was lost. The man who had freed us from bondage was gone, replaced by a beast that knew only rage and hunger. The next day, deserters were found, Karui warriors who had tried to flee into the woods. Kaom had them dragged before the tribe, their hands bound, their eyes wide with terror. Traitors, he called them, cowards who would betray their ancestors. He executed them himself, one by one, as we watched in silence, too afraid to speak. Afterward, I found Hiri by the river, her hands trembling. "He is not the man we followed," she whispered. "He is something else now." I wanted to comfort her, to promise that things would change, but I could not lie. The king we had loved was gone, and in his place stood a monster. Still, we marched on, deeper into the heart of darkness, our hope dying one step at a time. Chapter 4: The Fall. We reached the shadow of Highgate, where the mountains split the sky and the earth bled fire. Here, the land itself seemed to recoil from us, as if dreading the king we brought in our wake. Kaom's warriors, once proud and unbreakable, now marched hollow-eyed, haunted by the horrors we had unleashed and endured. The whispers in the night grew louder, and the darkness pressed closer, thick with the stench of rot and betrayal. Kaom was no longer the man who had united the tribes beneath the banner of Ngamahu. His voice, once the thunder that rallied us, had become a rasping snarl. He spoke only of sacrifice, of blood owed to the ancestors, or to the nameless spirit that now haunted his dreams. I watched him pace the campfires, his axe slick with the blood of friend and foe alike, his eyes wild and unseeing. The final madness came swiftly. Kaom gathered his finest, those who had followed him from the beginning, those who still remembered the promise of freedom. He led us into the depths of the mountain, into tunnels choked with the bones of the dead and the whispers of things best left forgotten. Here, he declared, we shall find the heart of Wraeclast. Here, we shall make our stand. But the darkness was waiting. The beast, the ancient nightmare that had poisoned the land, reached out to Kaom, promising victory, immortality, vengeance. He listened. He obeyed. In the choking blackness of the mines, Kaom turned on us. He saw traitors in every shadow, heard betrayal in every breath. One by one, he slaughtered those who questioned him, those who hesitated, those who wept for the world we had lost. The tunnels ran red with Karui blood, the screams echoing off stone that would never remember mercy. I fought to protect my brothers, to reason with my king, but he was deaf to all, save the voice in the fire. Outside, Hiri and the survivors sealed the entrance, desperate to contain the madness within. I saw her face, streaked with tears and ash, as the last stones fell. She did what she must. She saved what little remained of our people. Inside, Kaom raged, his axe rising and falling, his fury unending. The beast fed on his violence, his grief, his broken dreams. I hid among the corpses, praying to ancestors who could no longer hear me. The king, who had once been the voice of courage, the hand of Ngamahu, was gone. And thus, he was no longer my king. Voice of courage forever silenced. Now only rage, eternal. I do not know how I survived. Perhaps the beast spared me as a witness, or perhaps I am already dead, my soul wandering these tunnels with the rest of the dishonored. I remember the faces of my brothers, the laughter we shared, the hope that once burned so bright. All of it consumed by fire and madness. Kaom's legend endures, but not as he wished. The Karui remember him as both liberator and destroyer, the king who freed us from chains, only to bind us to nightmare. Hiri led the survivors back across the sea, her heart heavy with the price of survival. The ancestors weep for us, for the dream that died in the darkness beneath Highgate. Now, I wander these halls, a ghost among the ashes, bearing witness to the ruin of all we loved. The land above may heal, the Karui may rise again, but here, in the belly of the mountain, Kaom's rage burns forever. May the sea carry this tale to those who still remember. May the ancestors forgive us. May the fire that once united us never again become the pyre the story has come to an end. Our hearth still burns. Stay, warm yourself, and let sleep take you as the world drifts into silence.